Welcome back to another episode of the Winnipeg Market Watch podcast. Guys, first of all, Denzel and I are both honored to say that this is our 30th podcast episode ever. And it feels like just yesterday we had the crazy idea that we were going to start talking about specifically Winnipeg real estate, which is such a narrow niche thing for you guys to want to listen to. But we have a thriving investor community here. We have one of the healthiest and overall most active real estate markets anywhere in Canada in terms of metro areas. And this market is under discussed. Denzel and I are super proud and super happy to be at the forefront of the community building discussion in that front. Aren't we, Denzel?
Yes, absolutely. I I always say this, but I wish we had us 3 years ago when the market was correcting.
It would have been really fun to listen to something like this
Yeah.
as a younger realtor, even during 2020 and 2021, when things were running up for the first time. It would have been awesome to have a resource like what we're trying to create here, which is actually what was the progenitus of this podcast in the first place, was our experience from there and talking about how, hey, nobody's really talking about this.
Yeah.
And here we are 30 episodes later. The look and feel of how we do things has changed a little bit, but fundamentally, I hope you guys are still finding the information worthwhile and valuable. But the reason that brought you all here is, of course, the market update. Let's talk about May 2026. We actually saw the benchmark price fall from 469.9 to 466, which is just shy of a 1% month over month reduction. That being said, we're still up 6.25% year to date, and we are still sitting comfortably more than 3% above the all time high, which we actually cleared last year. Um, Denzel, in the last give or take week or two, now that we're in June 13th here, the date of recording, a lot of people have been talking about just how much the market has shifted and how different things are than they would have been even in the beginning of May, but especially from March and April. As somebody who's been out there trading property, both as a purchaser, as a seller of real estate, as always, do you want to talk to our audience a little bit about what you've noticed out there and you've experienced from both sides during this period here?
Well, I definitely think that the pace in which inventory is hitting the market, just judging by how active my emails are for notifications, is a lot more than even a month ago.
Yeah,
I'm also seeing that there's a lot of property that isn't exactly getting what a lot of people are expecting them to get in terms of a sale price. Um, and anyone who had a listing or a renovation going on while we had that crazy storm is having some issues, of course,
yeah,
with their projects or listings. And so I just think the market is starting to shift, or if it hasn't already, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned that last episode that the shift in the market was, if not already there, just starting, you
yeah,
know? And so I think it's way more clearer to see just from obviously the data with the benchmark price coming down 0.83%, right? From last month just goes to show kind of where the activity is, right? Once the inventory lands, buyers have options, and all of a sudden there's not just two bungalows in a MLS area, right? There's like five or six, varying in different finishes and quality, and so people have options. And when people have options, just know, as um, basic economics would suggest, that if there's more supply and the demand is equal to the supply, the prices are gonna come down, right? Um, and so yeah, we're having to shift our psychology as sellers a little bit, I think. Whether you're on the investing side or you're just someone who's looking to sell your property, patience is the key here, And if you're in a situation where you're an investor and the interest is creeping up and you're starting to panic, well, I'm going to tell you one thing from experience. It's better to just take what you can get and move on. don't fall in love with whatever the ARV was like 6 months ago.
And that, well, take what you can get and move on is often the way to do it in this business, whether you're an investor or a home seller. Like going on and on about how you should have been 5K higher, or, oh, my home truly was, based on my appraisal from 2, 3 years ago, clearly worth more. um, Often that's not the best way to go about this kind of market, especially if you're purchasing as well as selling. And this is something I've tried to talk a lot about in real life with many of you guys, is that when there's two ends, everybody, of course, wants to sell for more than they should and buy for less than they should. That's just often not realistic when you're shopping for a home. When you're an investor, that's the name of the game. However, it is important to remember, especially for you residential transactors out there, that if you're selling into a market and you're ending up short, and keep in mind, we're less than 1% off the all time high. This is not like we're in some crashing market and we're down 10 or 15% from where we were a year ago. That's just simply not the case. But on your purchase, you will likely have more power. And the conversations that I'm having with sellers and the conversations that are going, like specifically about pricing, are often such that we're pricing closer to where we want to be or where we think we should be. First of all, because we just have better information. And then, second of all, we acknowledge that the buyers have more option and therefore they have more power. So I think the heart and soul of today's episode, at least from my reading of the data, is we're in an environment now where rates have been steady for quite a while. Pricing is high, but it's not climbing, even though it's May or June now, which is actually seasonally atypical. Buyers definitely have more power. So what do you do? And I think that that's the main update that we're bringing here today. Hey, Denzel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that in mind, I mean, my experience in May was interesting because I felt like the transactions were happening at a good pace. Most of the sellers I was working with were ending up very happy. Most of the buyers I was working with were able to find property without having to fight too hard for it. Um, was May maybe our last crazy month for a while here? Or do you think that we're going to have a summer that feels a lot more like a spring?
I like that question a lot, Keenan. And I think that based on my experience and knowing Winnipeggers, my guess would have to be that we're probably just going to continue to see this downward trend. And I'm not, and like you said, we're not saying that it's going to be like, holy crap, we came down like 6, 7, 8 points. It's going to
Yeah.
be a little bit more gradual, of course. Um, and there's going to be people out there, or there very well is people out there on the market currently who are probably panicking and are going to sell their properties probably for less than what they're actually worth, just because situations can change, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, so to put it simply, I think we're probably just going to see a gradual decrease of the benchmark price. I think that the supply is going to continue to get on the market. People showcasing their lawns and landscaping jobs and stuff like that are going to be a little bit more of a higher priority, I think, with how buyers perceive value, right? Because now the summer's here, right? And people are going to the lake. Like the market kind of falls asleep a little bit in July and August, right?
It
Um,
usually has kind of done just that, like for the last
unless
couple of years.
unless you have a house with a pool and it's plus 35 out, then you might get lucky. Because I've seen some really high sales, which oddly happen on the hottest days of the summer, and there's a pool to show. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know. I think the market's probably going to do what it always does every single year in the summer, and that's just be a little bit slower. People are going to panic, and yeah, I also think though it's going to be a good opportunity to buy with the it goes both ways, right?
Mhm.
Not only sellers are going to have a little bit of a challenging time, I think, or I shouldn't say challenging. They're just going to be need to be a little bit more patient and set their expectations of their sale a little bit further down the line. Instead of selling in a week, it might be 2 or 3. It might not be 20 over. It might be ask. You might have to price a little bit higher and then get negotiated down, right? Just the way it goes. Um, and then as far as buying goes, I mean, a lot of investors like to take vacations. Like, let's be honest, right? They like to enjoy the summer. And so the competition on these offer dates for investor inventory might actually be uh less busy, you know?
And we've already seen that. Like the competition for projects that I've witnessed with my own eyes still remains rather high. However, um, it's definitely true that investors shop with a little bit less vigor in the summer than I've seen them shop in the fall and winter. And I believe we've talked about this on another episode as well about how the effect of December being the magical time of year to buy, where there's deals everywhere, is almost just completely flipped. Like it's a piece of wisdom that I think is out of date, mostly because everybody believes that to be true. And so then how could that be the case? Very simple market psychology. But in the summer, you're absolutely you hit the nail on the head where some of these investor focused properties are going to get overlooked because people aren't looking and they have other priorities. So when you end up in a situation where you as an investor are looking for deals, which have, by the way, been very hard to find for the past at least 6 months, if not longer, um, you now have a pool to pick from that would have just been saturated for maybe even a little bit too long, I would say. It's a bit of
Yeah.
a side question here, Denzel, but do you remember in 2023 when the market finally, well, maybe not finally, but when the market really was down? You could, within reason, walk up to most properties on the MLS, write a pretty low offer, and have a high chance of success, even if it was investable. You remember
Oh,
those?
absolutely. Oh, I wish, yeah. I don't wish we could go back to that time, by the way.
But the
But
availability of what you could purchase at the time would have been
yes,
probably pretty damn nice.
yes. Like, I'm not going to say the addresses, but we're talking like really discounted stuff for what it's worth. And yeah, definitely don't want to go back to that time because there was a lot of pain during that time.
Yeah.
But Denzel today would love to go back and coach Denzel back then and say, hey, like hindsight's always 2020, but I'm ready now. If that were to ever happen, I know exactly what we would need to do.
Yes. And so, even though we're not quite, well, actually, we're not even close to that, it still is important to know that it is legal to buy on the MLS and flip or burr or own a rental. Any of the above are fine. You just got to be realistic about what these things are going to be worth when you're done. And that's where, you know, having good advice and being reasonable as an investor comes in. But um, let's talk a little bit about what exactly specifically this power dynamic looks like in terms of buyer and seller activity. In May, we did see a lot more listings than the month before, but we saw an almost commensurate amount of sales overall. Like, let's put it this way, there were about 300 more properties listed in May than there were in April, but there were also about 300 more sales than there were in May rather than April. Um, Additionally, though, and possibly concerningly, the average sale price in April was actually just about 500,000, whereas the average sale price in May was only 477. So the benchmark is weighted. We had a 1% drop in price in May, which is not very seasonally standard at all. A lot of people are talking about how, a very significant average drop like that could scare some people. We for a long time, at least I have for a long time, said that 472 as a benchmark number was my number, and I justified that mostly based on what it would cost to purchase new construction. Um, where do you see things going over this next period? You've already said that you think it's going to be a bit of a slower summer in terms of crazies and in terms of not pricing for a way to allow a buyer to make an emotional mistake and overpay for property. Do you see this benchmark staying steady? Do you see us going down, or do you see us climbing in the short term here, Denzel?
I see us going down, and I think it's probably going to level out, in and around September and October. And when I say level out, I think we'll probably be in a benchmark of around maybe 445, kind of inside of there. Um,
Mhm.
I'm just looking at the HPI chart over the past 3 years, and I think last year could probably be the best, in my opinion, example of kind of where I would draw my future predictions from in terms of
Mhm.
like what the market is going to do. Um, I think about what's going on around the world, and what the Bank of Canada is faced with regards to trying their best to handle inflation and not allow things to get too out of control. And I don't think there's enough things going on. And again, this is a little bit of a biased answer only because I'm using kind of my own uh, situation as a place of drawing my conclusion. Is just that I think people are still wanting to buy. This is nowhere near, the sentiment in the market is nowhere near where it was in 2023 or in 2022, where the sky was falling and things were scary, right? Like you talk to
Yeah.
any realtor right now, like there's people in my family that are looking to buy property right now, and I'm at an age where a lot of people around me are thinking about buying, so it's not that the buyers are scared to go out there and buy, you know, the market's just doing what it does, right? Supply
It's true.
comes, the prices drop. Supply gets wiped out. People stop listing once it gets colder because they have an idea in their mind that the best time to list is when it's nice out. Inventory gets off the market. People still want to buy. Prices go up. Like it's just that. And we're in the end of Q2. And
Pretty.
um I mean, last July was busier. I will say that, right? Um,
I'm just pulling the numbers here. So technically, in terms of like comparing May to May, very, very similar metrics. We don't have June data yet, so that's a little bit tougher to say for sure. But um, overall, buyers probably have more power now than they did in 2025 May. And then
Mm.
assuming that June goes the way that I think you and I believe it will go, we actually had a very strong June last year. It
right.
was one of the busiest months in terms of like, well, the ratio of how many homes are being bought versus how many homes are being sold. And I'd imagine we're not going to quite get that kind of strength again at this point, 2 months in, although I could be wrong. I'm
Well, it doesn't
saying,
help that there's that storm.
well, right. And like we're now 3-ish days off of like a multiple tornado hailstorm with feet of water being poured into people's basements, rural Manitoba being decimated. That's just a tough deal.
Yeah.
The market, honestly, like I felt it viscerally, and the phone calls the subsequent day were pretty bad. People who had closings coming up are freaking out about if the house they just bought is dry or not. The sellers who maybe aren't even in a position to go and check on their properties need someone in there like now. And
Yeah.
showings on many homes just had to stop because somebody had a problem. And a lot of the times it wasn't even their fault.
Yeah.
So we're going to see if that really impacts it. Like obviously, in many months we have weather determining what's really going to happen. Like, and I specifically say in December and January, those are two where if you get a really nasty week, bad things can happen. But it's rare that in June we have kind of a full pump the brakes moment in the middle of what should be one of our better months altogether. So we're heading into this month and like we have 2 weeks of lived experience to talk about it. And I'd say from my perspective, I found it's easier for a buyer today than it has been in all of 2026.
Yep.
And the proof is in the pudding. Like I obviously am listing heavy for my own real estate business compared to purchasers, but when all of a sudden all of these buyers that I've been working with and been showing property to and we've been losing with for a long time end up being able to pull the trigger and being in one-on-one or one of three offer kind of situations, all of a sudden, like things get bought, and you wouldn't know it because the prices aren't moving much. Like we're offering numbers that are still very reasonable and very much in line with what the benchmark says it should be and what the comps are suggesting. Sometimes lower, but as a purchaser, you've got to be looking at this situation that we've got ahead here and thinking, geez, like I should do something about it. Rates are below 4%, you guys. Like we are directly back, and this is maybe the most recovered I think our market has been since the pandemic, in my opinion. That might be a hot take, but I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think that's I would agree to that. I would agree
Mhm.
to that that take there. I think look, the pace of the market's been brutal for buyers. Let's be honest. Like it has not been easy to buy a house, and if you have been buying a house, it's been tight, right? We've been talking about inventory for the past 6 months. And in May, I remember our episode, we were talking about the inventory's here, right? And it's not stopping in June. Like people are still going to list. Like I got three properties I've been saying we're going to be ready 2 weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it doesn't help that we got the water and now we have to deal with that. And so I'm not the only guy, obviously, that has inventory that they're waiting to list. I'm sure there are other realtors who have tons of listings that they want to put on the market, but now their buyer sellers are having to deal with their water situation, right? And it's just one of those things where uh, um, you just kind of have to move with the market, right? Uh, as an investor, I could see someone being awfully scared about what's going to happen. But look, like I said, just got to shift that perspective a little bit and just say it's just going to take a little bit longer to sell. So when you're talking to your partners or whoever that might be, or if you're a homeowner and you're a realtor and you're giving your listing presentation, you just got to say, hey, like the market is strong. We're far above where we were 2, 3 months ago still, but we're listing in the summer. So set that expectation.
True. And specifically speaking to you agents out there, there are situations where you can get away with doing what is at least what I call a spring strategy, where you put something really like quite low and think that people are going to just flock and you're going to get the 20 offer bidding wars, which again, a month ago we had one. I don't know what it would take to create that kind of scenario today unless it was an obviously investable product. But the numbers really show just the challenge there. When you look at the list of areas that are at 90% absorption or higher, which has for a long time been the metric that Denzel and I use for an area that's a slam dunk to sell in. Like you could put virtually any house on the market in those kind of areas and somebody's doing the deal.
Yeah.
As of right now, there's only five. And they're probably not even the areas that you would think off of the top of your head. We're talking South Point, like North Charleswood. We're talking about 1JW, West Fort Garry, not even the east side by the water. We're talking about Richmond West, like not Bridgewater, not Royalwood, not River Park South, Richmond West of all places. Old St. Boniface, and then the western part of Tyndall Park. Those are the only ones. Um, I don't think that many people, unless they're actually shopping or they're realtors, would have probably named any of those on their list of, oh, that area has been really tight. I don't know what to do about that. Like, even for me, I was pretty surprised at the data. Being a guy that has done actually quite a lot in Richmond West this year, I'm not surprised at that one, but that's just because I have a ton of lived experience in there. But the rest of them, like I've dabbled in those areas at one point or another in the year, but and I knew they were selling, but it just my hottest, I wouldn't have said. Just a very different environment than last year, where at this time there was probably about 15 or 20 neighborhoods that were 90% plus. So with that in mind, Denzel, like we still have a lot of areas that are doing well. Like there's a lot of 80% or higher ranges, but some of these areas, like I'm going to call out specifically Westwood and Crestview as two neighboring MLS areas that for basically the better part of 3 years were at 95% absorption every single month, no matter the time of year, 95%. Both of these neighborhoods, you guys, are now sitting in the 80s. And that doesn't sound like oh my god, like right, but um, this is the first time in a while we've seen that. Denzel, do you think that a part of this effect is those like darling neighborhoods have now just gotten so expensive that buyers are saying enough? I need to cool off and shop somewhere else because prices are too high? Or do you think that this is something more fundamental?
Um, wow, that's a good question. Uh,
I don't know how I'd answer it, by the way.
yeah, let me think about that for a second. Okay, we obviously have been every year since 2023, we've reached a new all-time high
Yeah,
around this time of year, right? I do think that the first-time home buyers, if you're not from those areas, have chosen other areas such as Sergeant Park, Lord Roberts, Crescentwood, um, the surrounding areas to where the more desirable neighborhoods are. I've noticed people deferring to those neighborhoods simply because the affordability is greater. Um, and so I did sell a house in River Heights recently where there was, I believe there was two people buying it, but there was help coming from the parents to pay
right.
in terms of a down payment to keep the costs where they needed to be so that the debt servicing was manageable for those two young people. And obviously, I'm not an agent working with a lot of buyers in those kinds of neighborhoods, but I would imagine that if you don't have that kind of help from family, that you basically are boxed into, a few select areas in the city that are close enough to where you want to be, but not where you want to actually be, right?
Yeah,
And I can see that there's people want like that can only go there, you know. Um, Again, I'll just use like some people in my family that are looking to purchase right now. We grew up in Tyndall Park. The closest area that is affordable to Tyndall Park, but is still considered a transitioning neighborhood, would be Weston or Brooklands,
yep.
right? And so those two neighborhoods um, have been getting a lot of the more younger people go into them, right? Just because Tyndall Park is pretty expensive for what you can buy. The baseline price is too expensive. Charleswood too. Like I don't know, like what would be the closest area to Charleswood? Crescentwood?
Oh,
What?
that's
St.
the
St. James? St.
that's the
James?
problem because the you know what, like the geography of Charleswood is just so unique with nothing really to the south, the perimeter to the west, Assiniboine Park to the east, and the river to the north. It's one of the reasons that area has been so expensive for a long time is it's one of those rare geographically advantaged neighborhoods where it's Charleswood or you're just not there.
Yeah,
Very simple.
or
West
families are sorry, go ahead.
Westdale would be the close one where there's more attached homes and smaller
Yes.
bungalows on that far reach towards Dale. But even that, a lot of people are still paying some pretty serious money for bungalows out there. I
Yeah, like
think you would be surprised actually if you looked into that.
yeah, I was going to say like that, like, I guess one can say that if you can't find a detached house in the areas that you want to be in, but you still want to be in that area, you start to look at different property types, attached housing, condos. And if you really just can't, but you want to be in that area, I suppose you just go and rent. I don't know. But in terms of buying, yeah, like they would just, I guess, go to like the next property types.
Some
So
people do. Like if
yeah,
area is king, then that's what you do. If area is not king, then you just pick the next area.
yeah. Like I guess to sum up my answer, I'd just say this, that are people just simply not looking in these darling areas because it's overpriced? I think, yeah. Like I just think that I shouldn't say overpriced because the prices are too high. My answer would be yeah. I think that it people are only going to go where they can afford, and if they can't afford the areas they want to be in, they simply just won't go there.
That's actually a pretty logical answer.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like if the house you want doesn't exist, you can't buy it. And as a
Like I'm
real, or go ahead.
I'm looking at I guess that would be what area code?
Which area are we talking?
Charleswood.
1G.
Yeah, I'm looking at 1G right now. The benchmark price is 600 grand. So, I mean, if you don't have that kind of pre-approval, you just aren't getting in there.
Pretty much. And it's kind of funny, but what I was going to say is, as a realtor, a part of what I need to do when I work with home buyers is I need to make sure that what they're trying to buy actually exists. Oh, and that sounds ridiculous to like real estate people, but believe me, there's a lot of people out there that they don't really know what they could even buy or what it costs. And so a huge part of the buyer education process is you've got to make sure they are aware of what their money could actually get them in these different sort of areas. And that's when buyers will sometimes wake up to the fact that, hey, if I go 10 minutes more east, I can afford the house I want, but I really would rather be 10 minutes west. And then
Yeah,
decisions get made.
yeah,
And the way I see it, I consider it a huge win if people get 8 out of 10 of their criteria and they can afford it. That's awesome because almost every single one of you out there, and yes, I'm calling whoever you are and you're listening to this, I'm calling you out directly. You think you can afford 10% more house than you actually can afford. And that's not your fault. The reason is because the market is moving at a rate that we literally have never seen in Winnipeg ever. And most Winnipeg minds in the real estate sector work on a slower clip than the industry is moving at these days. So it's not your fault, but expect that to be the reality if you were to drop everything and shop. But at the same time, if you own a house, your house is probably worth slightly more than you think too. Probably, unless you're watching your house specifically very closely. But
yeah,
anyway, that's a bit of an aside. Let's talk about some of these secondary area options. And I think that, Denzel, you would agree with me that there's a lot of neighborhoods where people um, probably wouldn't first choice these areas, but they'd likely choose them as a second or third option. And you mentioned Brooklands and Weston as one of them.
yeah.
Would you believe that the average price this past month in Brooklands and Weston was 240?
Wow.
Like that to me is pretty shocking because that was an area for a long time. If you had 200 grand, you could get just about anything you wanted. That's
Hmm.
becoming like not really realistic these days. Uh,
Yeah,
let's talk about area 4D. That's West Kildonan and Scotia Heights.
yeah.
Okay. This is an area for
Oh,
a super long time that you can get property for under 300K with ease. Average sale price 325.
yeah,
Kind of nuts.
yeah, yeah.
Area five, or go ahead.
I just spoke to a friend who bought his first house in that area, and he was just ecstatic. And I mean, it's the closest area to Garden City for people that want to be in Garden City but can't be, right?
Yeah, it's
Especially
true.
if you're in West K, or even if you want to be like around like North Main, right? If you want to be a little bit further closer to that. Uh, so yeah, Scotia Heights, West Kildonan, great area.
It's true. But these are like again, St. James area 5E. This is an area where the 300K buyers would used to go and they'd be king of the castle. We're now looking at an area where the average sale price is 350. So
Yeah,
we're in a situation now where Winnipeg went from a city when I started in real estate in 2018, 2019 is when I was really trading primarily for the first time. A 270 pre-approval would be able to get you a home in most of the Crestview, Heritage Park, Silver Heights area for the most part. It wouldn't be amazing, but it would be a home. And then if you got tired of fighting whatever battle you were fighting out there and you just wanted to win, you'd just go to St. James and you'd pick up something very similar for 270 and it would be a better house, but you'd be in St. James instead. Not even bad. That's a great area.
yeah,
Um, those buyers are buying part basement, 1.5 stories, turn of century in that area now, and it has not been that long.
yeah,
So think about it this way: the people who were looking for average Winnipeg bungalows are now needing pretty far above average financing capabilities to make it happen. And that's cool. That's the natural progression of a developing real estate market. This is part of the financialization process. Most of this money flows through the system anyway. Very rarely do people just sell and not buy. It happens, but you get the idea. And then often you have people that buy with no intention to sell for a long time. So when I look at this, I mean, we've just had now a 3 year, maybe 4 year stretch where we're going nearly double digit gains from bottom to top. Do you think this is something that we're going to see continue on for another year here, Denzel?
Hmm. Hmm. I think it's tough to say to look that far ahead into the future, in terms of just, where are we going to be in the fall? That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Um, Look, there's still things going on around the world that could affect how interest rates react, right? We are yet to know how um, those events are going to impact Canada as a whole. Um, and so, I'll stand on what I mentioned earlier in the podcast. I think that we're going to see a gradual decrease and then see a little bit of like an evening out of price somewhere in the 440s for as a benchmark price. Um, yeah, I was going to add though that I guess everyone should just buy in 5A. Like me and Keenan got a deal on Victor if you want.
Well, funny enough, yes, that is a deal. DM me for details. Very like, rarely available, like fantastic property. And 5A is randomly this MLS area that I think has a worse reputation than it deserves. And it's
I know,
probably
like I
the
just
only area in Winnipeg where prices haven't moved in years. You can use comps from 5A from 5 years ago and it's relevant.
I think if we just okay, here's the thing about 5A. Okay, West Broadway isn't that bad. Actually, it's basically Wolseley, right?
Close, yeah. Like
Right.
I
It's
get what you mean, but like the people that live in Wolseley would turn their nose at you right now. But
yeah.
people on Broadway would say yes.
And then you look in, I think everything in the first block of any of those streets from Home Street all the way up to probably Agnes are not that bad. The first block, I'm talking like right off Portage are okay, and then I can see why people are scared. But you know what? It's just the rental inventory in there that really deflates that neighborhood. Like
Yes.
there's a lot of landlords in there. There's a lot of people who don't really care about their home as a landlord because it's just an investment. And so, I mean, Bridgewater is probably going to look like that in a few years.
Well, every area in Winnipeg's core is going to have perpetual sort of transient, I'm here for a good time, not a long time kind of folks where they're in and out.
Yeah.
As long as these rental kind of properties are under rent control and the people living in there don't really have any intention to purchase ever, you're going to get problems that come with that sort of thing. Now, the trade of buy West Broadway because it's so well located within Winnipeg that as the city matures and develops, it's impossible for West Broadway not to become valuable is something people have been betting on for years. Some actually very notable real estate investors have been pouring money into West Broadway since the 2000s at least.
Yeah.
And many of them have done quite well, by the way. But I guess let's put it this way. The area is unique. West Broadway is definitely different than the rest of the area north of Portage Avenue. The area east, being the Furby, Langside, Yonge, and Spence streets, are definitely different than the Arlington, Holmes, Simcoe, Beverly, etc. streets. And you can visibly see the difference driving around. Like the percent, my gauge, by the way, this is just a little fun fact for those of you who are shopping in these kind of neighborhoods. You can sense the quality of the neighborhood if you look at back lanes and if you look at front streets very, very quickly. So if you look in back lanes and there's garbage everywhere and there are fences blocking off the back of the yard, that's a bad area. That's not good, especially if there's trash everywhere. It means that everybody's yard is closed and nobody's driving. That's really bad. If it's just fenced in the back, but it's clean, that's actually not the best, but it's not bad. It might have been bad in the past, but it's better now. And that means people are driving and moving around and cleaning it. Okay.
Yeah.
If it's a back lane and most people don't have fences in their backyard and it's clean, that's a good area. you can live there. From the front of the street, you just look for board ups, you look for burnouts, and then you look for people, especially in the summer. This is you can't really do this in the winter, but in the summer, if there's people who are mostly naked smoking cigarettes at the front, that's not good. If they're wearing clothes, smoking cigarettes in the front, that's acceptable. But that's that's my gauge. Would you agree with that, Denzel?
That's a that's a great breakdown of how to buy in areas like that.
We'll keep track of that. But honestly, about that western part of the West End, that section between, let's just call it Arlington and Maryland, the section that Denzel referenced as the much better than the other part, which I think is not even a really negotiation at this point. I think everyone would wholesale just agree with you on that. As you drive down those blocks, just note how many board ups and how many burnouts are there on these streets, and like you'll see the difference. Like go to some spots in the North End, and it's every other house is either halfway down or looks like it could be any day. 5A is not like that. It's mostly lived in, and yes, it's hard to sell for over 200K, and yes, the average sale price has almost perpetually been between 180 and 200 since forever. But what are you going to do? It might be that next area that people jump into because even 5C is getting too expensive, which is the area just on the other side of Arlington, for those of you who don't know. And they're now over 300 grand. So are we drawing a magic line down the map of Winnipeg, just whoop, straight shot down and saying like, that's 200, that's 300, go.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know that people are going to be willing to play that game for too long. And in 2022, I had clients regularly who were losing in 5C, and it wasn't even that expensive back then. And they ended up moving into the streets like Simcoe or Home or Beverly or any of these. They all they picked them because it was significantly less and it met their needs. So
Yeah.
um, keep that in mind. And if you guys want to be doing deals in 5A, give me a call or send me a DM. I will make sure that you guys get a fantastic deal on all sorts of property. We often have stuff on and off market in the area. I'm more than happy to chat about investing in Winnipeg Score. You good there, Denzel?
Oh yeah, we got
Yeah.
a special guest joining us soon here.
Guest joining. Okay. And there is Savea once again for the end of the episode. Um, Folks, that was all we kind of had planned to chat about here today. I hope that you guys found our 30th episode worthwhile, interesting, and enjoyable. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment under this episode. Or as always, you can give either Denzel or I a call or a DM. We're more than happy to discuss anything related to Winnipeg investments in real estate with you at your leisure. So, Denzel, on that note, that's it from me. I hope you guys have a great day. Anything to add?
Nope. Yeah, look, happy that we can be providing this kind of value for the past, 3 years, right, Keenan?
Two and a half
And
on this day.
two and a half. And look, we're going to keep reporting on what's going on in the market. And anyone who's investing or buying or selling or out there, just be diligent, do your due diligence, call Keenan, and that's it.
We will be in touch, everybody, and thanks again for listening. You guys have a good one.